Yeah, if Dennis shows up as well, it's Mark.
Hello, welcome to the May 5th Deschutes Historic Landmark Commission meeting. It's 5:31 and let's see, I got myself, Rachel Stemich, chair, got Eli Ashley here. I have Chris Fording Jones, and then online we have, is Dennis on? Mark and Dennis? Excellent. Okay, well, we'd like to bring the meeting to order tonight. Tonight's agenda is pretty short and sweet, more or less. First item is our approval of minutes from February 3rd. When I went on to the website to download those, I only found stuff for January, I think it was 5th or 6th. So I don't know if I just wasn't looking in the right place, but there wasn't an actual meeting minute.
Interesting that the link didn't work. If that's the case, let's hold off on approval of minutes and we'll double up next time.
Okay, unless I was looking in the wrong place, and that's possible. I was moving kind of fast. So yeah, if yeah, we can postpone that review until our next meeting. Our second order of business tonight is public comment. I don't know if we have anybody online who's joined in. Okay. Will, I did see that the email that was forwarded about questions on the AJ Tucker building. So I didn't know, did we want to take a chance, this opportunity to address that just while we can?
Record Will Groves, your planning manager. I submitted an email that was to each of you that was sent to us from Nunzi. I was interested in kind of the fate of the rock that was taken off the face of the AJ Tucker building. Certainly noting that that falls in the city of Bend in terms of some of their historic obligations. But, there may be, to the extent, this commission has an idea about where that rock might end up, it seems like, the intention was that something would happen rather than it just be stockpiled for eternity. So definitely nice to get a citizen nudge about, what our opportunities might be with that. I haven't identified anything to date, but if you have any ideas or you'd like us to follow up on that in any way, we're available for that.
Yeah, I know I do recognize that that's it was located in the city of Bend's jurisdiction. She may have actually contacted the county just because it being a county structure. So I see where that came from. Do we know where it's stored?
I don't.
I'm curious.
I'll fly filling in, of course, for Tanya Salzman today, and I'll take some notes to let her know that we're all curious where it's.
Yeah.
Stored.
Yeah, that's the last that I heard is that it was carefully taken apart and numbered, and I'm assuming placed in some sort of sequence, but like how long is it going to be stored for, and like how, I'd be curious to see, and I suppose this would be a county question, is there anyone, as the county being kind of the owner of this, I would assume, are we able to scan for opportunities to reinstall it somewhere?
That seems to be, I wasn't familiar with the process, but it seems to be that would be the intent of that we find some repurpose. So definitely, I think to the extent there were suggestions or opportunities, we can keep an eye out for that. It would, it'd be exciting to see it someplace.
And I'd be unsure of when that opportunity does occur, is whose jurisdiction is it to actually review and approve its reassembly somewhere.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a cooperative effort. I
think so.
My suspicion is the rocks are ours.
Yeah.
The peoples of Deschutes County, and then, it has to happen somewhere likely in the city of Bend unless we're going to relocate it outside of city limits.
Okay. That was all I had on that. I wanted to take the chance to address it since it came up so quickly.
Yeah, thank you.
So let's move on to action items. We have a HLC membership update tonight.
Yeah, certainly. And so we've been alerted that Commissioner Christopher has ongoing scheduling conflicts and she'll be unable to continue. So we want to thank her, of course, for her participation and service to the commission, and we will initiate a recruitment to fill this vacancy shortly.
Do you know for searching for replacements, is it going to be a similar process to what we did last year or the year
That's my
before?
anticipation.
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. We had so many good candidates when we went through that process. I hope we get a similar interest.
Yeah, I'd like to see if we can, particularly from that previous pool, reach out to some of those people and just make sure they're not missing the opportunity to reapply.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Okay, next item is our CLG grant discussion.
Yeah, thank you again, Will Groves. So the CLG grant was submitted at the end of February, and we have been awarded the 25-26 grant in the amount of $8,946. Grant's been signed, it's in effect. Next date that's coming up is an interim reporting and reimbursement request deadline for July 15th, 2025. And the grant included a number of tasks associated with it. Public education included expenses, production, printing, staff time for the Popular Sisters Walking Tour brochure, as well as support for Preservation Month in the City of Sisters. And the county will be using both in-kind time and these funds to update the county resource story map and HLC historic preservation website. We haven't done that for years, so excited to engage in that. Second task, of course, review and compliance, and this is going to be completely covered by in-kind match of staff time. And this is Tanya and I administering the HLC meetings, the quarterly meetings, updates to the Board of County Commissioners, and certainly as the DLCD's recent rulemaking for Goal 5 cultural areas progresses, we'll be bringing that to you. And ultimately, there may be some engagement in terms of local implementation of that rulemaking. I looked on the website, and it looks like that there's ongoing meetings associated with that this month. So we'll keep you posted on how that's going. Of course, the bulk of the grant was allocated to commissioner training. So there's about approximately $7,500 that was earmarked for travel to the Oregon Heritage Conference in Woodburn, Oregon, April 29th to May 2nd, 2026. The concept as we pitched it to I think to you and the granting entity was that, that we would fill that up as much as we could with commissioners. And if there's leftover space, we might send a staff person or two as well. Certainly, if that doesn't work out or if we have funds left over, backup opportunities could be entertained, including other training opportunities, webinars, virtual conferences, and other smaller education tasks. So some flexibility associated with those dollars. On page 3 of the packet for tonight, there's a cost breakdown associated with that. That's the update on that. Are there any questions?
Was that the full amount that we had earmarked, or is that just what we had added up based on our discussion?
I think the 8946 was the complete request.
Okay. And then I'm assuming that the staff will be reminding us when it's time to enroll for the Heritage Conference.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. I know it'll sneak up on us before we know it, even though it's 11 months away.
Yeah, it feels like a long way off, and it'll get here soon.
Yeah. Excellent. So the next item for discussion, I need to scroll to my other list. Oh yeah, Preservation Month. I would be happy to give everyone an update, at least from so far from the kickoff events that we had on Friday, on the 2nd. Our volunteer group this year it's pretty good. I feel like we were pretty well organized and getting stuff on our schedule, and it came down to the wire a little bit, just trying to find a kickoff event. And we actually ended up with 2 locations, right at at mid-April. Myself and one of the Deschutes Historic Museum staff reached out to COCC. They did their 75th anniversary celebration, and there's some pretty good publicity going on about that, so it was easy to reach out. I tracked down the coordinator for the event and asked them if we could have a table at their event. Just being that the college was doing a whole presentation of memorabilia and documentation and stuff like that, that I knew they were going to have a big display of that as part of the celebration. And so actually our little table that we had for Preservation Month stuff was at the end of that whole line. And that it was actually, it worked out pretty good. It's kind of like truncating that sort of history walk with myself and then Vanessa Ivy from the museum at the end. And we had 2, we had a variety of documents. We ran out of the list of events for the month, and some of the walking tour brochures that we had for Redmond and the ones that the museum coordinates for Bend were pretty much like flying off the table, so to speak. The one thing I regret is we didn't have any of the City of Sisters brochures, which is like, oh, shoot. So we didn't have any of those either available, or they hadn't been printed. So we missed getting those on the table. But the links that we have direct everybody to the museum, to the special webpage that they have for Preservation Month on there. And so the whole list is there. And so besides the kickoff, and I'll have Eli give us an update on the downtown location, but there's a whole series of events every couple days or whatever. There's walking tours in Bend, Redmond, Sisters, of course. There are several presentations throughout the month, and City of Redmond's doing a pretty big weekend worth of exhibits and stuff. You can go directly to their historic landmarks webpage, I think, for the full scoop on those. But yeah, it's going to be a pretty busy month. I think we also included, there's a couple of events too also happening at the Bowman Museum for Cook County, so we have those on there as well. There's like an archaeology presentation. I know I'm probably forgetting a couple here and there, but yeah, it's a really healthy list of the events. So, and we had a lot of good interest. There's probably 100 to 150 people at the COCC celebration, and we got a lot of good foot traffic, and it was a different mix of people than what we typically get from some of the downtown events. So a lot of younger folks, obviously college students, some who are genuinely interested in preservation. So that was the first. So yeah. So, and then going on almost simultaneously to that was the Downtown First Friday. And I know Eli was able to pitch in there. So, and I don't know anything that happened. I haven't been able to check in with the rest of the group yet since it was just on Friday. So how did things go, Eli?
Things went pretty well. There was a small group of volunteers, me included, and we answered questions about the month, Historic Preservation Month, and also downtown Bend. Some of the people who participated were members of the Bend Landmarks Commission and the museum, Deschutes County Museum. And it was good foot traffic. It was a busy night. A little less busy when the thunderstorm came around.
That's right.
And the rain, but people popped back out as soon as that was passed. So yeah, it was a good kickoff.
Excellent. Yeah. And we had there's a good flyer, a little questionnaire. I don't know if I'd call it exactly a scavenger hunt, but basically sort of a little Q&A sort of flyer. So it had images of different historic buildings, and then just a little trivia sheet is trying to link the buildings to the question, and then a little code sheet on the other side. So it turned out really, really good. So. And yeah, I think I think there's some proclamation type things happening with the city of Bend too. They usually do a sort of an announcement during their landmarks meeting that's later in the month. I think that's the only other thing I forgot. And typically what happens too with these is after each kickoff, we think of ideas for, okay, what do we do next year to improve it? So, or the volunteer group just needs, at this point, we'll reconvene probably after things settle a little bit and see what went well and what didn't. And we'll start gathering ideas for next year and volunteers. So if anyone missed out this time, it's always open. And then, so next item on our agenda is the draft fiscal year 2025-2026 work plan and the annual report.
Thank you. Again, I'll be presenting that. Adam, if you could elevate me as a panelist. I will share a slideshow. I have a slideshow that's probably more detailed than this commission would be interested in, but I'll go through it in a relatively quick way. Slow me down if there's parts you're particularly interested in. I definitely want to make sure I have plenty to say about this, and at the same time, I don't want to bore you with details that you might not be interested in. Share this. And of course, you can see we have with us this evening Peter Gutowski, our department director, CDD director, who may be adding some color commentary as we go through this process. There we go. Mode. Aha. All right. So of course, we come to you every year with a update on our work plan. This is the way that this is an annual effort to review the past year's work, as well as to talk about proposals for the coming fiscal year. And it's intended to allow the board, the PC, the HLC to give feedback to staff and direction on the work to be undertaken in the next year. Of course, community development's more than just planning. You see planners here in front of you, but there's also coordinated services, our building division, on-site wastewater, and code enforcement. So we keep that building across the way full and busy. The work plan process, of course, goes through the beginning of the year. It's the way the Board of County Commissioners sets the goals and objectives. And we take opportunities based on changes in state law, grant and funding sources, looking for public comments and carryover projects from a previous year. You can see up on the screen, there's kind of a history of how we work through this. And of course, here we are in front of the Historic Landmarks Commission. The work plan is included in your packet and is available on the website at that link shown there. This was left over from the public hearings for the PC. Some general themes that we've gone through. So growth and development, we're continuing to see population growth, driving demands for services. Every year, the legislature has new opportunities and requirements that we have to keep in line with. And of course, affordable housing and land use policies are key priorities that we see from the board and the community. We think a lot about regulatory compliance. Of course, legislative sessions bring us new obligations and opportunities, and dealing with complex land use law cases, evolving with these state and local case law and rules. Lots of community engagement, of course. Looking at making sure our website and our digital services are as efficient as possible, and addressing public inquiries for, there's a lot of work that we do that does not generate fees. We're a fee-supported department, but I'd say a good half of what we do, doesn't directly result in fees. It's people asking questions, coordinating with us, finding out what's possible. And of course, we're thinking about a lot these years about infrastructure and environmental considerations, significant themes about groundwater protection and septic systems in association with that, as well as transportation system updates, wildfire mitigation updates, and looking to help us improve our efficiency. Thinking about budget, we've seen some modest improvement in permit volumes, a lot of it in the past year driven by accessory dwelling units, ADUs. They were 4% of our total permits. And permitting still seems real strong right now, particularly the planning division seeing a relatively strong spring in permitting, which is, is good news in terms of our stability for staffing. We have our workforce and staffing changes over time, but we have about 52 total FTE. Noting that we've got a lot of staff that are eligible for retirement in the coming years. So we're thinking a lot about succession planning and working with HR to collaborate on recruitment and retention in this very competitive market. We talked a little bit about the significant non-fee generating work we do, research, legislative priorities, looking to balance our productivity with staffing transitions and economic shifts. And some of the other themes we've talked about before about our digital services and affordable housing. So the annual report, looking at the past year, we've maintained a high level of service for the customers and promoted online permits. We've got a lot of community engagement in our online permitting process. And again, thinking about succession planning, cross-training, and technology investments. Of course, we have performance measures, report to the board regularly about a variety of metrics. And here we see some stuff from the Building Safety Division, looking at inspector stops today, and inspections completed on the same day as requested. So a variety of things that we do to track our performance. Of course, the planning division, it was a big year for us. We did some housekeeping updates, worked through some wildfire hazard building code amendments, did an amendment to permit the Bend Air Traffic Control Tower, as well as the board reviewed but didn't adopt some mini storage opportunities in the code. Big deal, transportation system plan was updated, and also the Deschutes 2040 comprehensive plan. Significant update of that, and a little bit of news on that front is that comprehensive plan update was appealed. In response to that appeal to the state court, which we withdrew that document to bring it back to the Board of County Commissioners to make some changes. If you're interested, I can go into the details, but there was an appeal by Central Oregon Land Watch, and we concurred that there were some things that needed some tuning up before we wanted to go into the courts about it. And so we're bringing back, and we're having hearings to update that. And just land use applications last year were down very slightly, 3.6%, but still a robust year. Looking into the coming year, of course, there's a public engagement here, including this commission to revise the work plan and provide recommendations. Of course, the comp plan update will be a major ongoing theme, and it's been a multi-year task, and the board has indicated interest in us working with, so we have regional plans. We've done one for Tumalo in recent years, and there's interest in seeing the Newberry Country plan updated. So those are kind of our comprehensive plan process. Natural resource and hazards, as I hinted before, a major theme with groundwater protection, thinking about fire maps, mitigation plans, coordinating with the BLM on sage grouse issues, and dark skies, a perennial favorite that we're hoping will come to the front burner this year. I think I've got Tanya's plate clear, and she'll actually be able to do this year. So we're excited for that one. Lots of coordination with the cities. I'll hit some highlights there. Thinking about the city of Bend, it feels like the legislature every year gives them a little carve out to expand the city. And so we coordinate with them on that. La Pine's going through its comprehensive plan process, finishing that up. And we've got some land in the city that we're coordinating master planning issues with them. City of Redmond, of course, thinking about their master plans, the joint management agreement that we do to work through some lands that they manage on our behalf, as well as they're thinking a lot about expansion. They've got the Core 3 facility that's up by the airport. It's a facility to do first responder training. Some interest in seeing some expansion opportunities for the city, as well as making sure that the industrial lands that they've planned for in the south of the city are connected to the highway in an appropriate way. Of course, the City of Sisters, we participate in their Sisters Country Vision Plan, their comprehensive plan, and they're currently going through UGB expansion. So lots of interaction there for us. So the board has had some priorities for housing strategies. One of them, the state has made it so that we can no longer regulate the occupancy of housing based on relationship. So historically, we said, who can live in a house? A single family house? A single family. And it turns out, here in modern times, so many of us have found families and other arrangements. And, that certainly doesn't make sense. And the state agreed that we should no longer be doing it that way. But now we have no basis to say how many people should be in a house. Whoops. So, certainly septic systems, other limitations, traffic, suggest that maybe there's some limitation in the number of people who could be in any house. And we probably need to explore that. Looking to think about, of course, rural housing and homelessness issues. And of course, Terrebonne and Tumalo are both looking to get sewer systems up and running, which will really change those communities. There are some zoning text amendments. These are things that have been identified over the years. I can talk to you about any of them, but they're all, a lot of them tidy ups to make sure that the code works in an efficient way for people. I'll pick one. There's a provision, we could explore allowing self-serve farm stands. You've probably seen these in other communities where it's, there's no employee sitting there. You just come up with your $5 and walk away with some eggs. And it's a wonderful thing. And our code does not allow for it. So it'd be neat as we found time and resources to make that available and just remind people that they need to keep these things out of the road right of way and make sure there's a place for cars to pull off and turn around and just the basics. Of course, the Planning Commission was interested in doing some panel discussions. They've historically done water panels, and they're interested in doing some panels on housing. We've seen some citizen input about having Deschutes River Woods be recategorized as a unincorporated community. It seems like that may be a pretty heavy lift under state law. And again, the board continues to be interested in groundwater issues in South County. Sure, you're all generally aware that that there's a shallow aquifer there that's seen some increasing and significant contamination with nitrates down there, and trying to think about how to get ahead of that. A lot of septic systems, big costs involved, and one of these things that planners worry about a lot. That we're setting in motion by flushing our toilets down there today, problems that people 20, 30 years from now will have very expensive solutions to try to think about, and doing all we can to try to minimize that pollution plume and make things better for people in the future. So next steps, here we are at the Historic Landmark Commission recommendation. And what we were looking here for you today is for any advice, thoughts you might have as we move forward to the board about how either the board generally operate, but most specifically to thoughts that you've had about how you'd like to see the board interact, both in the community with your commission, any ideas that you have. So I'll be typing those down dutifully and reporting those to the board that, in a format of, hey, we had a meeting on date and there was interest expressed in this. And that could be anything from the AJ Tucker rocks to broader opportunities. And with that, I'm available for any questions.
Any of our commissioners have any comments?
I have a question. It's just curiosity on my part. Are you fully staffed, or do you feel fully staffed enough to handle the workloads?
Yes, we are.
I mean, I know the answer is no, but reality.
Yeah, so you saw that list of zoning text amendments. If you were to give me, a dozen planners, I would know what to do with them. And at the same time, as we were talking about earlier, there's advantages as to being frugal and efficient with resources. And so I think we're striking a good balance at this time. One of the things that's interesting is we've kind of, a number of our staff are coming into that time of life where people start thinking about starting families. And we're seeing through the staff taking advantage of the kind of the generous benefits that the county offers, and we're seeing sort of rotating staff out, and that's we certainly can't hire behind that. People will be out for a limited maternity or paternity leave, and so that's resulted in some resource allocation tricks. So right now we've got someone out and are coming into our busy season, so trying to just figure out how to balance that, and at the same time, boy, do we want to be so supportive of that, and we're figuring out how to make it work. Looks like we have a hand up online.
Yeah, well, I just in my 9 to 5 have been tracking a number of land use bills in the agricultural, the EFU zoning space. Is there anything that you guys are tracking which may be something that you may have to bring in for consultation to this commission that you're seeing in the legislature right now?
this legislative session, there doesn't seem to be anything teed up specifically. The thing that we've been tracking and we'll be bringing before you, of course, is the rulemaking committee on the Goal 5 inventory, historic resources. But in terms of the legislature, there's nothing that we're tracking at this point that would make changes that we'd likely need to bring in front of you. So no big changes generally. I mean, there's certainly things that aren't expressly historic, but might be so landscape changing that we'd want to alert you to them. But there wasn't anything that we were specifically tracking. It seems like a relatively calm legislative session in terms of new opportunities or significant new limitations.
Thank you.
I think related to that somewhat, is, have there been any, either planning or building permit related projects, that are historic in nature, but not requiring, landmarks, knowledge or review
That's a great
of those?
question. So,
we don't often, I don't know if Tanya's been giving us updates on stuff like that. I know some of the reviews come across as administrative only, but even like from like how does it tie in with other things that are not necessarily what we're going to be reviewing, but it'd be nice to kind of know, I guess.
Actually, the only thing that's come up, of course, the Peterson Rock Garden has an active volunteer group.
Mm.
They recently received an award from Webfoot to do some work out there. And it's my understanding that they've retained an attorney to talk about how to reactivate that property. The land use is relatively complicated. They're in a farm zone.
Mhm.
So, to the extent that they're operating, they need to do that either through a non-conforming use, what's colloquially called grandfathering. So you've been here a long time, keep going. It may be that they look to change that permitting process. There's opportunities that may be possible through looking at it as a community center so that they could reinvigorate it and allow new people to interact with it in new ways. And so we're coordinating on an ongoing basis.
Mhm.
It's land use is relatively complicated in the state of Oregon. Someone told me that with the exclusion of Florida, we come the closest to being a statewide HOA for better and worse. And that project, it's going to be cumbersome to, the farm zones, of course, are protected as, when you think on the other side of the mountain, we have some of the best farmland in the world, some of the best forest land in the world, and our EFU and forest zones are designed to protect those resources. And, when you get to this side of the mountain, frequently you've got some very rocky soils that maybe don't need that same level of protection, but there isn't a good intermediate to deal with that of saying that, hey, this isn't city, this isn't, someplace that's been historically developed at, near urban scale, but it's probably not economically a farm,
Mhm.
beyond a hobbyist or without significant investment.
Mhm.
So, as they move forward, they're going to be doing that in the context of being in a farm zone. So it's something with ongoing engagement, and we definitely anticipate in the future being before you to talk more about that.
Mhm. Is there language currently having to do with like grandfathered uses or that were in place like before our current zoning system?
Yeah, so the way that this works is, generally, if you started doing something legally, you can keep doing it. And you can even make changes to that, provided it really boils down to that it's no worse from the neighborhood. But one of the things that can happen is that when you have a non-conforming use, let's say that you had an auto dealership that was out in the middle of nowhere, and you change the rules and said, we really don't want auto dealerships out in the middle of nowhere. You become a non-conforming use, and the idea is that that use would be extinguished over time. And so if you interrupt or abandon the use, either in part or whole, you can lose the rights associated with that. So one of the things that'll be interesting as the rock garden moves forward is to see how, I know that there's been potentially disruptions in the continuity of the operations out there. Certainly the building has a right to be out there. But, to the extent that, that they might want to move towards community uses or gift shops or, maybe even food service out there, those things all, the continuity with that may have been disrupted. So it'll be interesting to explore with them and their attorney where they'd like to go and how the land use system deals with that.
Yeah.
Are there any ongoing discussions with the Confederated Tribes as it relates to potential work for the Landmarks Commission?
So I'm of course filling in for Tanya this evening. My understanding is that we are on a little bit of a hold as we wait for a significant engagement that will likely come out of this Goal 5 rulemaking associate. There's significant engagement with the tribes that are anticipated at that time, and we've got tribal neighbors to our north, east, and south, and so important to coordinate with each of them. We've really only historically interacted with the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. It'll be interesting to talk to some of these other tribal councils as we start to think about landscapes and how they and the board together would like to enact this opportunity, but no current outreach with regard to that. They've been vigorous participants in the Thornburg Destination Resort process. There's some concerns there about water and fishing rights and treaty rights associated with that. And we had a work session for that today and a hearing coming up on that topic.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Excellent. That was a really good synopsis of all that, Will. Thank you.
And I'll say, Will, I did land use in Florida, and it's harder in Oregon.
Oh, that's good. I've never gotten any feedback about that. But I've read in a textbook that, it's Oregon and Florida that really, we're your statewide HOA apparently. A little bit. We don't have any rules about flamingos on your lawn yet.
We can have deer on them, like the 4 or 5 of them that were out here a little bit ago. Real deer. Yeah, that was really good report or
Yeah, thank you. Do you have
summary of
anything
all of
you'd
that.
like to see me carry forward to the board about kind of what's interesting to you in the coming year?
I guess I would probably going back to the, historic properties and how those contribute to multifamily homes or potentially homelessness issues, anyone not having a home. Knowing how, if there's any way that the Landmarks Commission can assist with that. I don't know how, but I know that it's such a prevalent issue and concern.
Any other thoughts from the group? And of course, this is not your only moment of
No.
truth. This is the designated time for which we receive this type of input. But at any of our regularly scheduled meetings or via email to Tanya, if you have
Mhm.
a bright idea that you want to explore, as you've seen, we can be relatively nimble and get to the board,
Okay.
with ideas. So this isn't a speak now or forever hold your peace opportunity. And the board will conduct hearings on this matter. So if you think of something right after this meeting, do feel free to email us and we'll carry it forward.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that we could do some brainstorming on that. If we're ready to move on to the next topic is the subcommittee roundup. I feel like it's been ages since we chatted last. I guess it was February. So, and I can't remember exactly. I know that there was one of the subcommittees that Lori was on for Camp Abbott. I know on that list, we wanted to see if there was any commissioners that could also assist with that. I don't even believe we've talked too much about it. I know Tanya was probably keeping track of that list pretty well, but Will, did you have updates on any of that for us before we check in?
No, I hadn't received anything. So
Okay.
we're here this evening to see any discussions you've had, document those, any thoughts you have for the future, support you might need from us as you head into those.
Mhm.
Again, this was recognized that, you've made significant contributions by being available to us in the capacity that you are here. You'd expressed some interest in kind of meeting more often and talking more often. And I know that life can get in the way there. So I want to make sure that this doesn't feel like an unfunded obligation to you. And to the extent you're producing additional value and having fun, that's amazing. And to the extent that it's a lot or too much and want to back down away from that, that's always an option as well. But definitely interested to hear any discussions you've had since last we met.
Yeah. We had, so there's 4 topics that we had: the cultural resource work, wildfire and preservation issues, Camp Abbott, and then general public awareness issues, and Preservation Month. And I think life has gotten in the way for Mark and I as far as the cultural resource work, because I don't think we've chatted hardly at all on that topic since our last check-in. So Mark, you and I were waiting to see how things went through one of the drafts.
Yeah, correct. We were still waiting on the Goal 5 process, which it has yet, I've not, and personally speaking, as somebody who's works for an entity that's relying on federal grants, things have just been busy. But but yeah, I think as far as I'm aware, they did put out the draft recommendations. They still have not finalized it, is my understanding.
It's my understanding as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like, Mark, you and I probably need to do a re-review where things stand on that and see what kind of input. It's been enough time. I feel it's elapsed that we could use a refresher on, or at least I could. So-
And I have had a hard time keeping track, but I thought they were trying to finalize those for June, but I might be wrong.
I will
Sounds right.
flag for Tanya and I to get you we'll send you out an email update on the latest on where that's at, because I haven't checked in a while either, and it'd be good to get us all on the same page.
Mhm. Yeah, if there's an update you could send us, that will be at the bump to the top of my email list probably. On the second item for wildfire and preservation issues, I don't know if Eli or Lily have had chance to,
We haven't met since our first report.
yeah.
And, but I do have one question, and it relates to the CLG grant.
Mm.
Will, did you mention that we were going to update the county website for historic?
That's correct.
preservation purposes? Will that update all the owners and locations of all the historic properties that have already been designated?
That, yeah, to the extent that those things are in the index, we would basically be doing a refresh on that and make sure that
Okay.
ownership information, location information was current, that links still worked, and
Mhm.
just generally keeping it up to date.
That's great, because that was one of our questions and our impediments, I guess, which was just identifying and communicating with the owners
Mhm.
regarding fire safety. So if that's going to be the case, then we can kind of move to kind of a more action phase than just writing our report and revising it. So maybe we can work with you on that, actually.
Yeah, for sure. And those resources are available. We can very easily turn, the list we have of tax lots into present owners.
That'd be great.
It's a 10-minute expedition. So
Okay.
you don't necessarily need to wait for the website update to the extent that, we want to dig into that a little bit.
And then maybe with whatever updated county information on fire safety, I know that's going through a lot of change right at the moment.
Mhm.
Maybe we can kind of utilize your skill on that as far as communicating what maybe historic buildings, as they might be have different needs than typical owner occupied property.
Yeah. And so I think what we'll see coming out of this is sort of the best available technology in terms of what's a cost efficient way to protect your property. And, to the extent that there's recommendations for other properties, these may be subject to the same recommendations, certainly would probably be required to make, to the extent that home hardening or defensible space are required for changes to a property, that likely we would consider those sensitively in the context of a historic property. But that may be worth pushing, as we've talked about, to these owners and say, hey, you've got something valuable here,
Mhm.
get a weed whacker if you could, please.
Chainsaw up.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's great. Thank you. That's all I've got to report.
Okay, great. The next topic, what subcommittee topic was for Camp Abbott. I'm saying that in past tense, but that's so that was Mark and Lori. I don't know, Mark, did you two ever chat a bit about it? I think we missed an update last time on that as well. I'm not really sure if anything's occurred on that subcommittee.
Yeah, I mean, I need to follow with Lori. I knew that was primarily her interest, so we just need to get something on the calendar, which we will do.
And then the last item, general public awareness, education outreach and preservation month. That's basically, that was mine and Lily and Eli for that. So, and we all three of us participated or have had some interest in preservation month planning. I know Lily wasn't able to actually attend, I think.
I think you did
Any of
this as far as the commissions. Thank
Oh,
you very much for taking a heavy lift on that.
Oh, yeah. No, it's one of those things where you just kind of have to jump in and just, and we're more than happy to have, volunteers available, just, even for ideas on, and at this point, I feel like a lot of, the 2025 stuff is pretty much in motion, but, for next year, any sort of ideas that you have, jot them down and let's, we'll start the planning process for next year, beginning of the year. So,
I got
Yeah.
the sense that it was a more all-encompassing schedule than the prior year.
Mhm.
I think, yeah. I mean, I
That
feel like,
that seems pretty impressive.
yeah, that's exactly right. I feel like we're building momentum again from a couple, 2 or 3 years of being pretty low key. Yeah, just recovering from all the pandemic stuff. So yeah, it's, we're getting our legs back, I feel. But, yeah, so I was gonna say something else. Now I forgot what it was. Yeah, just to keep your ideas, in mind for next year. And yeah, the more the merrier. I feel like it's always good, even if it's something as, not just like an event that we could list, but people you might know who could be good, lecture, presentation type situations, things like that. So it always helps to know people who know people. Um, yeah, but the public awareness thing, I feel like that just with the visibility that we have during Preservation Month, I think is been pretty good. When I was going by on Wall Street yesterday, I noticed that even the Tower Theater had Celebrate Historic Preservation Month on their marquee, and it's like, oh, and I didn't even know they were going to do that. So I was thrilled to see that. So, but yeah, it's like, not just the kickoff events, but, there's Preservation Month banners that are throughout the city of Bend or through the downtown. And I think the Old Mill District had something too. There was another discussion on even banners and stuff for that. So, and then of course Redmond's got quite a good coverage as well. So, yeah, I think we all do what we can in a kind of in a volunteer type mode. But the heavy lifting, though, I feel a significant part of the coordination is the Deschutes Historic Museum. And then there's a couple of us on the other commissions, Bend and Redmond, and of course ours here that, yeah, we all kind of pitch in and make it happen. So, I mean, our core group is usually around, I don't know, 8 to 10, 8 to 12 people every year, like when we're really in good momentum. So the more the merrier. All right. That wraps it up for our subcommittees. Our next agenda is staff and commissioner comments.
Well, on behalf of staff, I think we covered a lot this evening. Everything that was on the top of my head, we got through. If you have any questions for me that are outside the topics that we covered, otherwise I'm certainly available, but don't have any particular updates. I'm gonna turn around to Director Gutowski. Anything for the good of the order? Seeing none?
Yeah, I think we're good here. All right. Excellent. Well, I guess actually before we adjourn, what is our next meeting going to be set for? Is that our late summer check-in? Usually it's August?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I don't know that off the top of my head.
Yeah,
But Tanya does, in fact, and so she'll definitely
she'll follow up.
to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, typically in the past, for a while, we were definitely using the August get-togethers. They were we were trying to either hold them in sisters just so that we had some variety in place. But there's also we've also had quite a few tours organized with the staff. I know we've been chatting about that for a few years, at least post-pandemics, and I don't think we've really gotten much on that. I don't know. It's probably a little too late for that, but if
Maybe not.
I don't know.
Put it in, highlighted it. So
Okay,
Tanya and I will
question
definitely
marks?
talk about this.
Okay. All right. And if we have ideas, if there's something that we could coordinate for the next meeting, that's another thing to brainstorm on.
Yeah, definitely.
So-
If you have topics, potential speakers, ideas,
Mhm.
a tour. It would be fun to go out to Sisters, and so we'll see we'll explore what
Yeah,
the
that would
doing
be
that might
great.
look
I'd
like.
like that.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's kind of the only comment I had, was just making sure we had our August or roughly August or September date on the calendar. So, all right. Well, with that, if there are no other comments, I'd like to adjourn our meeting for May 5th. And it is 6:22 p.m.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.